Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family, today we will bring you a romantic love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Chapter 1. An Unexpected Encounter. Kara Carter stepped into the grand lobby of the upscale apartment complex, her high heels clicking rhythmically against the polished marble floor. The shimmering chandelier light reflected off the simple black dress she wore, an attempt to blend into the crowd of strangers. In her hand was a glass of white wine, plucked from a server's tray just to keep her hands occupied. This was a welcome party for new residents, an event she hadn't really wanted to attend. But Lily and Leo had begged her to go see the grown-ups dressed fancy. A faint smile crossed her lips as she thought of her 5-year-old twins at home with the kind neighbor lady, but it faded quickly when her gaze landed on a figure in the crowd. The glass in her hand trembled, a few drops of white wine spilling over the rim, soaking her cold fingers. The man stood less than 10 meters away, tall and imposing, in a perfectly tailored black suit, his dark brown hair neatly swept back, and his piercing blue eyes scanning the room like a predator. Brian Hughes. Kara's heart clenched, her breath catching in her chest. 6 years had passed, but that face remained unchanged, cold, arrogant, and so strikingly handsome that she'd once believed she'd trade the world to keep him. But he had left without a word of goodbye, abandoning her with 2 tiny lives and a shattered heart. She turned her face away, trying to steady herself. "It can't be," she muttered, convincing herself it was an illusion, that New York was too vast for them to cross paths by chance. But when his deep, warm voice rang out, introducing himself as the chairman of the building's board, her fragile hope crumbled. He was her new neighbor, the man she'd once loved with every fiber of her being, the man she'd sworn never to see again after he deserted her, now stood just steps away. 6 years ago, Kara had been a dreamy 22-year-old working at a small flower shop on the outskirts of New York. Brian had entered her life like an autumn breeze, sudden, captivating, and leaving a lasting echo. He'd stop by to buy flowers, sometimes a bunch of white daisies, sometimes a few pale roses, always with a slight smile and conversation that made her heart flutter. They'd never officially dated, but the looks, the brushes of hands as she handed him flowers, and the late evenings he stayed to help her close the shop said everything. She loved him, a naive and fierce love she'd never dared confess. Then one night, after drinks at a bar near the shop, things spiraled out of control. They drank, they laughed, and they fell into each other in Kara's tiny apartment. That night, it felt like the world shrank to just the two of them, as if her silent love had finally been returned. But the next morning, when she woke up in a cold bed, Brian was gone. No message, no explanation. Just the faint scent of his cologne lingering on the pillow. She called, texted, even visited places he frequented, but he'd vanished from her life. A month later, she discovered she was pregnant. Her conservative, strict family disowned her when they found out, branding her a disgraceful daughter. Kara had cried herself dry, grieving both his loss and the loneliness of facing the future alone. Now, standing amid this lavish party, she watched him laugh and chat with those around him, exuding confidence as if nothing had ever happened. She gripped her glass tighter, struggling to maintain a calm expression. "Mom, look, he looks like the dad in my dreams." Lily's clear voice echoed in her memory, from a time the little girl had seen an old photo on Kara's phone. She'd hurriedly deleted the only picture she'd kept of Brian, but his blue eyes lived on in their children. Leo with his deep calm, and Lily with her vibrant mischief. Brian turned his head, and his gaze inadvertently met hers. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. She saw his brows furrow slightly, as if he, too, recognized something familiar. But then he turned away, resuming his conversation with someone else. Kara exhaled, though her heart pounded as if it might burst. She couldn't let him know. She couldn't let him waltz back into her life, and the twins only to leave again. For 6 years, she'd built a small but safe world for Lily and Leo. A little flower shop, a cozy apartment, and a life that didn't need the man who'd betrayed her love. She set the glass down on a table and turned to leave the lobby. The chatter of the party faded behind her, but Brian's piercing gaze seemed to follow, cutting through the layers of memories she tried to bury. She didn't know that, at that very moment, Brian was watching her retreating figure, a strange feeling stirring within him, as if he'd just missed something vital, once again. Chapter 2. A Clash-Filled Encounter. The Saturday afternoon at the upscale apartment complex was bathed in soft golden sunlight, rays filtering through the tree canopy along the street, illuminating the peaceful road where children played. Kara stood in her small kitchen, deftly preparing sandwiches for Lily and Leo, a little reward for helping her clean the flower shop that morning. Their clear laughter echoed from the courtyard, where Leo pedaled his small blue bike and Lily chased after him, clutching a bright red ball. Kara smiled, a rare sense of calm settling in her chest. Over the past 6 years, she'd learned to cherish moments like these, when the pain of Brian's abandonment and her family's rejection faded into a distant shadow. But that peace shattered when a piercing scream rang out from the courtyard. "Mom, Leo fell!" Lily's voice shrilled, laced with fear. Kara dropped the butter knife, her heart pounding as she bolted for the door. She raced down the stairs, her slippers nearly slipping off, and when she reached the courtyard, the sight before her froze her in place. Leo, her 5-year-old son with tousled brown hair, was cradled in the arms of a tall man, Brian Hughes. The little bike lay overturned beside them, its wheels still spinning in the air. Leo's knee was scraped and bleeding, thin red scratches trailing down his shin. But he didn't cry, just pressed his lips together as he looked at the man kneeling beside him. Brian, dressed in a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and black slacks, was gently wiping the wound with a clean handkerchief from his pocket. His hands moved carefully, his deep, warm voice reassuring. "Don't worry, it's just a scratch. You okay, kid?" Kara felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. She wanted to scream, to rush forward and yank her son from his arms, but her feet felt nailed to the ground. Brian's gaze lifted, meeting hers, and for a moment, time seemed to halt. Those deep blue eyes, eyes that had once looked at her with a tenderness she'd mistaken for love, were now cold, though a flicker of unease passed through them. She saw him pause as if memories of their past were flooding back to him too. "Leo!" she shouted, her voice cracking with panic, finally breaking free of her paralysis. She ran forward, dropping to her knees beside her son and pulling him into her arms, checking his wounds with trembling hands. "Mom's here, are you okay? Does it hurt a lot?" Leo shook his head, his blue eyes so like Brian's, meeting hers with an uncanny calm. "I'm fine, Mom. He helped me." Kara gripped her son's shoulders tightly, trying not to look at Brian, though she could feel his stare burning into her. "Thank you," she said icily, keeping her eyes down, her tone hard as stone. "I'll take it from here." She stood, lifting Leo despite his weight straining her arms, and turned to walk away. Lily followed, still clutching her ball, glancing back at Brian with curiosity. "Wait," his voice called after her, low but commanding. Kara stopped, but didn't turn around. "The boy's scratch is pretty deep. I have a first aid kit at my place. Let me get it for you." "I can handle it," she snapped, her voice sharp, then quickened her pace toward the stairs. Her heart thundered, not from worry over Leo's injury, but from Brian's presence, threatening to dismantle the wall she'd built over the past 6 years. But Brian wasn't one to give up easily. After she settled Leo on the sofa in their apartment and retrieved the medical kit from the kitchen cabinet, a knock sounded at the door. Kara gritted her teeth, knowing exactly who it was. She opened it, and there stood Brian, holding a small blue plastic toy car, Leo's, dropped when he fell. "This belongs to the boy," he said, his tone even but his gaze sharp, probing her. "Thanks," Kara replied, snatching it and moving to shut the door. But Lily was faster. The little girl darted out from the living room, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Brian. "Who are you? You look like the dad in my dreams." Her innocent voice rang out, unintentional but piercing Kara's heart like a dagger. Kara froze, the color draining from her face. Brian stilled, his brows knitting together, his eyes shifting from Lily to Kara, then down to Leo, the boy on the sofa, whose blue eyes, so like his own, gazed back with curiosity. "Dad?" he repeated, his voice dropping, as if grappling with something unbelievable. "Lily, get inside now!" Kara yelled, her voice shrill with panic. She pulled her daughter back, shoving her into the apartment and slamming the door in Brian's face. Heedless of his stunned expression, the lock clicked sharply, but it couldn't silence the chaos pounding in her chest. She sank to the floor, pulling Lily and Leo into a tight embrace, her breathing ragged. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears spilling silently. "I didn't want this." Memories of the days after Brian left surged back. Nights she'd cried herself empty in a rundown apartment, her belly growing, and her parents' harsh words as they cast her out. "You brought this on yourself, so deal with it." She'd sworn no one, especially Brian, would hurt her children again. But now he was right next door, separated by a single wall, his presence a storm threatening to sweep everything away. Outside, Brian stood motionless before the closed door, his hand still gripping the knob as if tempted to knock again. Leo's blue eyes, so like his own, flashed in his mind, alongside memories of Kara from 6 years ago. Afternoons in the flower shop, her laughter when he clumsily arranged a stem, and that drunken night, the night he let his heart lead, only for his family to rip him away with cold threats. "She's not worthy of you. Marry the Grayson girl, or you'll lose everything." He'd left, thinking it was his only choice, but now staring at that shut door, a strange emptiness gnawed at his chest. He walked slowly back to his apartment, his mind unable to let go of Kara and the 2 children. Leo's eyes, Lily's innocent words, they were pieces of a puzzle he wasn't ready to face. For the first time in 6 years, Brian Hughes, a man always in control, felt utterly adrift. Chapter 3. Secrets Unveiled. Brian Hughes sat in his luxurious office on the top floor of Hughes & Company's real estate conglomerate, the light streaming through the large glass window, highlighting the sharp lines of his face and the deep blue eyes now clouded with contemplation. A computer screen glowed in front of him, displaying a financial report, but his focus wasn't on it. Instead, his mind drifted to the previous afternoon. Leo's eyes, a mirror of his own, Lily's innocent cry of "Dad," and Kara's cold, panicked gaze as she slammed the door in his face. For 6 years, he'd lived with the conviction that leaving her had been the right choice, a necessary sacrifice to secure his place in his family and their business empire. But now, everything he'd once been certain of was starting to crumble. He tapped his fingers lightly on the desk, then reached for his phone, dialing James Carter, a private investigator who'd handled sensitive cases for him before. "James," his voice was low and firm as the call connected. "I need you to look into someone. Kara Carter lives at Westview Apartments, Unit 12B. I want everything about her from the last 6 years, where she's been, what she's done, any notable details, as fast as you can." James, with the raspy voice of a longtime smoker, replied, "Got it, boss. I'll have something for you within 48 hours. The call ended, but Brian felt no relief. He stood and walked to the window, gazing down at the bustling New York City below. Memories of Kara flooded back like an old film reel, her radiant smile as he fumbled with a flower stem in her shop, the way her eyes lit up whenever he stopped by, and that drunken night when he let his emotions take over, only to wake up gripped by fear of what his family would do if they found out. He'd chosen to leave, changed his number, moved to the London branch at his father's command, and tried to bury her in the past. But now she was right here, just steps away, and those children. 2 days later, James appeared in his office with a thin but densely packed file. "This is everything I could dig up on Kara Carter," he said, placing it on the desk. "She lived on the outskirts of New York after leaving her parents' place 6 years ago. Seems her family cut ties when she got pregnant. Caused quite a stir in that small neighborhood. After that, she bounced around, working odd jobs from waitressing to selling flowers on the street, until she opened her current shop 3 years ago. 2 kids, Lily and Leo, twins, 5 years old now. No information on their father in any records." Brian flipped through the pages, his hand pausing at a note. After leaving her old neighborhood, Kara Carter was reported visiting various spots in central New York, asking about a man named Brian, last name unknown. She stopped searching after about 3 months. His chest tightened. She looked for him. While he was hiding out in London, dodging any ties to his past, she'd been desperately searching for him, her belly growing. He wondered how she'd felt when she couldn't find him, when her family turned their backs, when she had to face it all alone. "James," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thanks. I'll take it from here." The investigator nodded and left, leaving Brian with the file and a growing sense of guilt. He couldn't sit still any longer. He needed answers, and only one person could give them to him. That afternoon, Brian stood outside Unit 12B, his fist clenched before he knocked. Footsteps sounded from within, and the door opened, revealing Kara in a simple gray t-shirt, her hair tied up, her brown eyes flashing with wariness. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice icy, her hand gripping the door as if ready to slam it shut. "We need to talk," Brian replied, his tone low but resolute, "about Leo and Lily." "There's nothing to talk about," Kara cut in, her gaze sharpening. "You have no right to show up here and demand anything." Brian stepped forward, placing a hand on the door to stop her from closing it. "I know you looked for me," he said, his voice dropping. "I know you don't want me here, but I need the truth. Those kids, they're mine, aren't they?" Kara let out a laugh, but it was bitter, devoid of joy. "The truth? How can you handle the truth when you're the one who chose to walk away? 6 years ago, you vanished without a word, leaving me with 2 kids and a family that called me a disgrace. I looked for you, Brian. I went everywhere trying to find you. But where were you? You don't deserve to know anything about them." Her words hit him like a punch to the chest. He wanted to argue, to say he'd had no choice, that his family had forced him, but he knew any excuse now would ring hollow. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice rough. "But if they're my kids, I have a right to know." "A right?" Kara shouted, tears glistening in her eyes. "You lost that right when you left. Stay away from us." She pushed the door, but Brian held it firm, his eyes blazing with determination. "Kara, I'll find out the truth, whether you want me to or not," he said, then let go and turned to leave. But in his mind, a plan was already forming. He couldn't rely on her words. He needed proof. The next day, Brian returned to the complex, carrying a small bag of toys he'd bought for Lily and Leo, a pretext to get close to them again. When he knocked, Lily answered, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. "You're back?" she asked, her voice clear and bright. Kara appeared moments later, her gaze wary, but she couldn't stop Lily from inviting him in. As Lily gleefully opened the toy box, a colorful set of building blocks, Brian noticed Leo's blue knit cap on the sofa. The one the boy had worn when he fell off his bike was now frayed at the edges, a long, loose thread exposing the inner lining. He bent down to pick it up, holding it in his hands and examining it carefully. "This is Leo's, right?" he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes flicking to Kara to gauge her reaction. "It's damaged. If you don't mind, I could take it to get fixed. I know a good tailor." Kara frowned, clearly suspicious, but she had no solid reason to refuse in front of Lily, who was looking at her with curious eyes. "Fine," she said reluctantly, "but no rush." Brian nodded, slipping the cap into his coat pocket naturally, though inside his plan was crystal clear. As he left, he subtly tugged a few short, light brown hairs caught in the frayed wool, carefully tucking them into a small bag in his pocket. He sent the hair sample to a private lab, requesting an expedited DNA test with his own sample. 3 days later, the results arrived in a discreet white envelope. Brian opened it in his office, his hand trembling slightly as he read the line. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Lily and Leo were his. The truth lay before him, undeniable. He sank into his chair, his mind reeling. Joy mingled with pain flooded through him. Joy that he had 2 children, and pain that he'd missed their first 5 years. He recalled Kara's words, "You don't deserve to know anything about them." She was right. He'd chosen his family over her, left her to face everything alone. But now, knowing the truth, he couldn't turn away again. He was angry at her for hiding it, angry at himself for his past mistake, and deep down he knew he had to do something to make it right, whether Kara accepted it or not. Chapter 4. Opposing Reactions. Brian stood in his spacious apartment, the soft golden glow from the table lamp casting light on his face, accentuating the deep blue eyes now brimming with conflict. The envelope containing the DNA test results lay on the coffee table, The words probability of paternity, 99.9%, etched into his mind. Lily and Leo were his children. The realization warmed his heart with unexpected joy, yet stabbed him with a cold blade of guilt. He'd had 2 children for 5 years and never known. And worse, he was the one who'd thrust Kara, the woman he'd once loved, into a whirlwind of pain by abandoning her 6 years ago. He clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms as anger surged within him. Anger at Kara for hiding it from him, for not giving him a single chance to make amends over the years. But deep down, he knew that anger paled in comparison to the self-reproach gnawing at him. He recalled the days at the flower shop, Kara's radiant smile, the way her eyes sparkled whenever he stopped by, and that drunken night when he'd let his heart take the lead, only to be jolted back to reality the next morning by his father's cold voice over the phone. "She's not worthy of you. Marry the Grayson girl, or you'll lose everything. The company, the family, all of it." He'd chosen to leave, believing it was the only way to secure his future. But now he realized the true cost: Kara and the 2 children he'd never known. He couldn't sit still any longer. He needed to face her, to lay everything bare, whether she wanted to hear it or not. Grabbing his coat, he strode out of his apartment and headed straight to Unit 12B. When he knocked, footsteps approached, and Kara opened the door, her eyes darkening at the sight of him. "You again," she said, her voice icy. "I told you to stay away from us." "Kara, we can't keep doing this," Brian said, his tone low but firm. "I know the truth now. Lily and Leo are mine. I have the DNA results." Kara's face went pale, her hands trembling as she gripped the doorknob. "What did you do?" she whispered, her voice breaking with anger and panic. "You dared to take a sample from my child without asking me." "I had to," he replied, stepping closer. "You left me no choice. But now I know, and I want to make it right. I want to be part of their lives." Kara let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Make it right? You think you can waltz in here, say a few apologies, and everything will be fine? You don't understand anything, Brian." She took a deep breath, tears streaming down her cheeks, but her voice remained resolute. "Do you know what I went through? When you disappeared, I found out I was pregnant. I looked for you everywhere, called, went to places you'd been, but you weren't there. I stood outside your house for hours only to be told you'd gone to London. And then my family, they called me a disgrace, kicked me out with a suitcase and a few coins. I cried until I had no tears left, Brian, but you weren't there. I raised 2 kids on my own, got through it all by myself, while you lived your fancy life somewhere else." Her words cut into him like knives. He wanted to interrupt, to say he didn't know, that he'd been forced, but he couldn't. He just stood there watching her cry, each tear an accusation he couldn't deny. "I was wrong," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know what you went through. My family, they threatened to disown me if I didn't follow their orders. I made the wrong choice, Kara, and I've regretted it every day since. But I'm here now. I want to make it right, for you and the kids." "Make it right?" Kara repeated, her voice trembling with fury. "You think I need you now? I survived 6 years without you, and I'll keep going. I don't need you, Brian. My heart might have once beat for you, but now it only aches when I see you." She turned to shut the door, but he held it open, his eyes blazing with desperation. "Kara, I'm not asking for forgiveness right away," he said, "but I'm not walking away again. I'll prove I can be the father Lily and Leo deserve." She didn't respond, just stared at him for a long moment before closing the door, leaving him outside with a heavy heart. But not everyone wanted Brian to make amends. Olivia Moore, his longtime business partner, and a woman who'd secretly loved him for years, had noticed the change in him since he moved to the complex. She often visited his office with contracts, but lately he'd been distracted, his gaze distant whenever Kara Carter's name came up. Olivia wasn't naive. She knew something was off, and she wasn't about to lose him to another woman. One morning, Olivia hired a freelance gossip monger, handing him a stack of cash and a carefully crafted story. Kara Carter, a single mom at Westview, is exploiting Brian Hughes, CEO of Hughes & Cotillard, for money. She deliberately moved near him, using her 2 kids to manipulate him. Within 24 hours, the rumor spread across tabloids and social media. Sensational headlines popped up. Rich CEO duped by single mom? Kara Carter, gold digger of the century? Olivia smirked with satisfaction as she read them, convinced this would sow doubt in Brian's mind and draw him back to her. The fallout came faster than she'd anticipated. The next morning, when Kara opened her little flower shop, she found the window smashed, pots overturned, and red spray paint scrawled across the wall. "Gold digger! Get out!" Regular customers turned away. Passers-by pointed and whispered. Her phone rang incessantly with anonymous insults until she had to turn it off. She stood amid the wreckage, hands shaking as she picked up a crushed white daisy, tears falling silently. Brian heard the news from an employee's report and rushed to the shop. When he arrived, Kara was sweeping up broken glass, her shoulders trembling, but her eyes defiant. "Kara," he called, stepping closer. "I'm sorry, I didn't know this would happen." "Don't say anything," she cut him off, her voice cold. "This is what happens when you step back into my life. I don't need your pity, Brian. I don't need you." But as she turned away, he saw her wipe a tear, and his heart ached. He knew she still felt something, even just a flicker, but her resolve was a wall he couldn't breach. He left, but not to give up. He called Olivia, demanding she meet him at his office. "What do you know about this?" he asked, his tone icy as he shoved a tabloid with a screaming headline in her face. Olivia feigned surprise, but a flicker of panic crossed her eyes. "I don't know anything," she said. "Maybe she brought it on herself." Brian stared at her for a long moment, saying nothing, but suspicion took root in his mind. He'd find the truth, and he wouldn't let Kara suffer more, whether she accepted him or not. Chapter 5. Misunderstandings. Kara Carter stood amid the wreckage of her flower shop, the early morning sunlight streaming through the shattered window, glinting off the shards of glass scattered across the floor. Overturned pots spilled soil everywhere, and the red spray-painted words, "Gold digger, get out," on the wall loomed like a curse. Her phone buzzed incessantly with anonymous calls, hurling insults until she turned it off. Kneeling, she picked up a crushed white daisy with trembling hands, tears rolling down her cheeks, though she bit her lip to stifle any sobs. Over the past 6 years, she'd learned to stand firm against every storm, since her family disowned her, since she raised Lily and Leo alone. But this storm was bigger than she'd imagined, and it bore the name Brian Hughes. The rumors spread like wildfire. Tabloids, social media, and whispers in the apartment complex all spun the same tale. Kara Carter, single mother, had deliberately moved near Brian Hughes, CEO of Hughes & Co., to exploit him and extort money using her 2 children. Each day she faced prying eyes, murmurs behind her back, and reporters lurking outside her shop, their cameras aimed at her like they wanted to strip her past bare. The flower shop, her pride built from her last savings, now stood empty of customers. In just a few days, everything she had seemed to be crumbling. Brian, in his apartment, couldn't sit still as he read the tabloid headlines. Rich CEO duped by single mom? Kara Carter, gold digger of the century? He knew most of it was fabricated, yet anger simmered within him. Anger at Kara for hiding their children, anger at himself for letting things spiral this far. He'd tried reaching out, knocking on her door each evening, but she refused to see him, offering only a cold, "Don't come here again, Brian," through the crack. Still, he couldn't give up. He called his company's PR team to manage the situation and hired lawyers to threaten lawsuits against the outlets spreading lies. He wanted to protect her, even if she didn't want him to. One afternoon, as he sifted through articles for clues about the rumor's source, his phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, he opened it to find a screenshot of a conversation, accompanied by the note, "You should know the truth about her." The exchange appeared to be between Kara and someone named Sarah. "Sarah, did you pull it off? Got close to Hughes yet?" Kara, "Yeah, finally met him. Everything's on track." Sarah, "Perfect. The media will help you. Let them blow it up. He won't dare ditch you again." Kara, "Exactly. I just need his attention. The rest will follow." Brian read it again and again, his grip tightening on the phone until his knuckles whitened. The message struck like a dagger into his already fragile trust. Was it deliberate, Was she using the media to manipulate him? He wanted to believe it was fake, that Kara wasn't that kind of person, but her words from the other day, "You don't understand anything, Brian," echoed in his mind, sowing doubt. Deep down, he still loved her, still remembered the pure love in her eyes 6 years ago, but now he wasn't sure he could trust her. In a mix of anger and pain, he called his lawyer, his voice ice cold. "Prepare a lawsuit against Kara Carter. I want custody of Lily and Leo." The lawyer hesitated, but Brian cut him off. "Do it now. I won't let her use the kids to manipulate me anymore." He hung up, but his heart felt heavy. He knew he was going too far, but anger and the fear of betrayal had clouded his judgment. Kara received the court summons on a drizzly morning. Sitting at her kitchen table, she stared at the white paper stamped in red, her hands shaking as she read, "Brian Hughes was seeking full custody of Lily Carter and Leo Carter, claiming she couldn't provide a stable environment." It felt like the ground had collapsed beneath her. This was her worst fear, not losing the shop, not the rumors, but losing her children, the only ones who'd stood by her through every hardship. Lily and Leo played in the living room, their laughter a jarring melody against the storm in her heart. She buried her face in her hands, tears seeping through her fingers, but quickly wiped them away as Lily ran over, hugging her leg. "What's wrong, Mommy?" the girl asked, her blue eyes, so like Brian's, filled with concern. "Nothing, sweetheart," Kara whispered, pulling her daughter close. But inside, she knew she couldn't stay here any longer. The media, the rumors, and now the lawsuit, it was suffocating her. She had to leave, to protect her children before Brian took them away. That night, she began packing, stuffing clothes and essentials into 2 suitcases. She called an old friend in the suburbs, asking to stay for a while, and booked bus tickets to leave New York at dawn. As Lily and Leo slept, she sat by their beds, stroking their hair, tears falling silently. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I won't let anyone take you away." But deep down, an old wound reopened, the one from 6 years ago when Brian left without a word, and now he'd stabbed her again. Brian didn't know Kara had gone until he knocked on her door the next day and got no answer. He called, but her number was disconnected. Panic surged through him, and he rushed to the complex management office, only to learn she'd vacated the apartment the night before. He felt like he'd missed a step, as if everything he'd tried to control was slipping through his fingers. Meanwhile, media pressure intensified. Reporters swarmed his office, hounding him with questions about Kara and the custody battle. In the chaos, he agreed to hold a press conference to clarify things, hoping to quell the rumors. But standing before the microphones with dozens of cameras trained on him, he heard his own voice, cold and detached. "I haven't confirmed any relationship with Ms. Kara Carter. The lawsuit is a private matter, and I'll handle it through legal channels." His words aired on every news outlet, and that evening, Kara, in a small suburban house, caught it on an old TV. She sat on the sofa, clutching a cold cup of tea, staring at his face on the screen, the face that once made her heart race, that once left her crying until she had no tears left. His statement cut like a blade, sharp and precise, slicing into her heart. No confirmed relationship. 6 years ago, he'd left without a word, and now he denied her to the world. She turned off the TV, tears falling silently, but she didn't sob. She was too used to this pain. Back in his apartment, Brian felt an emptiness engulf him. He looked at Leo's blue knit cap, the one he'd taken for the DNA test, now repaired and sitting on the coffee table. He picked it up, clutching it tightly, and for the first time in years, he felt he'd lost everything. Not because of his family or company, but because of his own wrong choices. He wanted to find Kara, to apologize, but she was gone, taking their children and a piece of his heart he'd never reclaim. Chapter 6. Realizing the Mistake. Brian Hughes drove through the quiet suburban roads, his headlights cutting through the misty trees in the dark night. A week had passed since Kara left the apartment complex with Lily and Leo, leaving him with an emptiness and regret that wouldn't fade. His cold statement at the press conference, "I haven't confirmed any relationship with Ms. Kara Carter," echoed in his mind like a self-inflicted curse. He'd thought he was shielding her from the media, but instead, He'd pushed her to the edge, and now he didn't know where she was. The custody lawsuit, the messages between Kara and Sarah, it was all a mess he'd created, letting doubt overshadow the love still smoldering in his heart. He pulled over to the roadside, gripping the steering wheel tightly, and pulled out his phone to reread the text that had shattered his trust in Kara. "The media will help you. Let them blow it up. He won't dare abandon you again." He'd believed it was real, let it drive him to sue her. But now he wasn't sure. She'd vanished with the kids without a trace, which didn't align with the message's intent. Something was off. The tone didn't match the Kara he knew, the resilient woman he'd loved 6 years ago. He called James Carter, his private investigator, his voice hoarse. "James, I need you to dig into that text I sent you last week. Find out who's behind it, and this time, don't miss anything." James replied curtly, "I'll get on it. Give me 2 days." Brian nodded, though James couldn't see, and hung up. He stared into the darkness, overwhelmed by helplessness, but he couldn't stay still. He needed to find Kara, to apologize whether she accepted it or not. 2 days later, James appeared at his office with a stack of documents and a wry smirk. "You're not going to like this, boss," he said, dropping the papers on the desk. "That text came from a burner phone, but I traced the buyer, a freelance muckraker named Mike Rollins. He confessed that Olivia Moore, your partner, hired him not just to spread rumors about Kara Carter, but to fake that conversation too. She gave him a detailed script, had him screenshot it from a mock app, and sent it to you as a warning." Brian felt his blood run cold. He flipped through the files, bank transfers from Olivia's personal account, a recorded call between her and Rollins, even an email from Olivia to a tabloid editor pushing the rumors about Kara. It was all laid bare. Olivia had orchestrated everything, the gossip, the fake texts, the media onslaught, to drive a wedge between him and Kara, to keep him for herself. He clenched his fists, anger flaring like a wildfire, but it soon gave way to a deep, aching pain. He'd believed the lie. He'd sued Kara, pushed her out of his life, all because of a scheme he should have seen through from the start. Without hesitation, he summoned Olivia to his office. When she walked in, dressed in a striking red business suit with a confident smile, he threw the documents onto the table in front of her. "Explain this," he said, his voice icy. Olivia paled but tried to stay composed. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her voice trembling. "Don't play dumb," Brian snapped, pointing at the papers. "You fed the press. You faked the text to make me doubt Kara. What did you want, Olivia? To get me back? Did you think I was too stupid to figure it out?" Olivia opened her mouth to argue, but his piercing glare silenced her. "Get out," he said, his voice dropping into a menacing growl. "You're fired, and if I catch you near Kara or my kids again, you'll regret it." Olivia left, her shoulders shaking, but Brian didn't care. His only thought was finding Kara. James kept digging and finally tracked her down. She was living in a small town outside New York, over 2 hours' drive from the city. She'd opened a tiny flower shop in an old wooden house, living quietly with Lily and Leo. Brian didn't hesitate. He drove there that night, his heart pounding with hope and fear. When he arrived at dawn, he saw Kara outside the shop, holding a watering can, her face weary but still resolute. He stepped out of the car, but she didn't look at him, just kept tending her flowers as if he weren't there. "Kara," he called, his voice rough. She paused but didn't turn. "I know the truth now," he continued. "Olivia was behind it all. The rumors, the texts, everything. I'm sorry. I was wrong to doubt you, to sue you. I didn't know where you were, and I went crazy thinking I'd lost you again." Kara set the watering can down and turned to face him, her eyes cold. "You're always good at apologizing after it's too late, aren't you?" she said, her voice bitter. "You think an apology can erase what I've been through? The media, the lawsuit, what you said at that press conference. You stabbed me again, Brian, and now you want forgiveness?" Before he could respond, a scream rang out from the house. "Mom! Leo's not okay!" Lily's voice shrieked, thick with panic. Kara bolted inside, Brian right behind her. They found Leo on the sofa, his face flushed, breathing shallow and rapid, his forehead burning with fever. Kara cradled him, her hands trembling as she checked his temperature. "Leo, sweetheart, wake up," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Brian didn't hesitate. He scooped Leo up and said, "We need to get him to a hospital. My car's outside." They drove to the nearest small hospital in silence. Leo's faint breaths the only sound between them. At the hospital, doctors rushed him into the ER, diagnosing a high fever from an infection. Kara sat in the hallway, clutching Lily, her eyes red but silent. Brian stood a few steps away, engulfed by helplessness. He wanted to hold her, to tell her it would be okay, but her icy stare held him back. After hours, Leo was moved to recovery, his condition stabilized. Brian entered the room, finding Kara by his bedside, holding his hand tightly. He knelt beside her, his voice shaky. "Kara, I'm sorry. I know I can't fix what I've done, but you need to know the truth. 6 years ago, my family threatened to disown me if I didn't leave you. I chose wrong, and I've lived with that regret every day. When I found out about Lily and Leo, I just wanted to make it right. But I made everything worse. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm not leaving again. I'll be here for you and the kids whether you want me to or not." Kara met his gaze, her eyes still cold, unwavering. "You're right," she said evenly. "You always make things worse. I trusted you once, and you left. I gave you a chance to be in our lives, and you sued me. I don't want to trust you again, Brian. I don't need you." She turned back to Leo, focusing on him as if Brian no longer existed. Brian stood, his heart heavy. He knew he couldn't force her, couldn't erase the wounds he'd inflicted. But as he left the room, he saw Lily in the hallway, her blue eyes so like his, watching him curiously. He gave her a sad smile, ruffled her hair, and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere, okay?" Lily nodded and he stepped outside, resolved to prove that this time he wouldn't give up. Chapter 7. Healing. Brian Hughes stood in the hallway of Willow Creek Hospital, the harsh white fluorescent lights casting a glow on his face, highlighting the deep blue eyes now filled with determination. Inside the room, Kara remained by Leo's bedside, her hand gripping his tightly, her shoulders trembling slightly from exhaustion, but her gaze still resolute. Her cold rejection, "I don't want to trust you again," echoed in his mind. Yet instead of deterring him, it only fueled his resolve to prove that this time he wouldn't give up. He'd lost her once 6 years ago, and he wouldn't let it happen again. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, carrying a small bag from a nearby convenience store, a pack of chicken porridge, a bottle of water, and a clean towel. Kara looked up, her eyes flickering with wariness, but she said nothing as he set the bag on the table beside the bed. "Leo will need something to eat when he wakes up," he said, his voice low but gentle. "You do too. You look exhausted, Kara." She didn't respond, turning her face away, but he didn't leave. He opened the porridge pack, poured it into a plastic bowl he'd grabbed from the nurse's station, and stirred it, the steam rising with a faint, comforting aroma. Leo stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open, his face still pale but the fever subsiding. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice faint. Kara immediately leaned down, brushing his hair back. "I'm here, sweetheart. How do you feel?" Leo nodded weakly, then glanced at Brian, his blue eyes so like Brian's, curious but unafraid. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice small but clear. Brian smiled, a sad yet warm smile. "I'm someone who wants to take care of you," he replied, handing the bowl to Kara. "Can I help?" She hesitated, but when Leo gave a feeble nod, she relented, stepping aside to let Brian sit by the boy. He scooped small spoonfuls of porridge, blowing on them carefully before feeding Leo. The boy ate slowly, and each time Brian wiped his mouth, Kara's heart wavered. She turned away, hiding her emotions, but the sight of Brian tenderly caring for her son stirred something she couldn't ignore. That night, as Leo drifted back to sleep, Brian didn't leave. He sat on the hard plastic chair by the bed, chin resting on his hand, his eyes gradually closing from fatigue. Kara watched him from the corner of the room, seeing him doze off, his head slumping but his hand still lightly holding Leo's, as if afraid he'd vanish. She bit her lip, a warmth creeping into her chest, but she quickly suppressed it. She didn't want to trust him, didn't want her heart to soften again. The next morning, Leo was discharged, and Brian offered to drive them home. Kara agreed reluctantly, unwilling to let Lily and Leo walk in their condition. In the car, Lily sat in the back, chattering about flowers she wanted to plant, while Leo rested silently against Kara's shoulder. Brian drove slowly, occasionally glancing at her through the rearview mirror, but she didn't meet his eyes. When they reached Kara's small wooden house, Brian didn't leave immediately. He stepped into the flower shop, noticing the neglected plants from the past few days, some wilting from lack of water. "Let me help you fix this up," he said, not waiting for her approval before rolling up his sleeves and carrying the pots outside to water them. Kara watched, wanting to tell him to stop, but she stayed silent, letting him work. In the days that followed, Brian became a quiet presence in their lives, though Kara wouldn't admit it. He came every morning, bringing toys for Lily, a puzzle set or a ball, and played with her in the yard. He sat with Leo, telling him stories about the buildings he'd constructed, his deep, soothing voice coaxing rare smiles from the boy. He fixed up the shop for Kara, repainting the sign, replacing a cracked window, even planting a row of white daisies out front, the kind she'd loved 6 years ago. One evening as Lily and Leo slept, Brian stood at the shop's door, holding a bunch of daisies he'd just picked. "Kara," he called, his voice rough, "I never forgot you. For 6 years I lived like a shell, knowing I'd made the biggest mistake of my life by leaving you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm begging for a chance to start over, to be a father to Lily and Leo, and the man you once loved." Kara looked at him, her eyes wavering, but she didn't answer. She turned back into the house, closing the door, leaving him outside with the flowers in hand. Yet her silence wasn't rejection. It was a test. She wanted to see his persistence, to know if he truly changed. And Brian understood. He didn't give up. He kept coming every day, kept caring for Lily and Leo, kept mending the broken pieces of her life, slowly rebuilding the trust he'd lost. Chapter 8. Emotional Climax. Brian Hughes stood at the podium in the Hughes & Company headquarters press room, the relentless flashes of dozens of reporters' cameras illuminating his face. A face marked by determination, yet tinged with pain. For over a month, he'd stayed in Willow Creek, using actions to rebuild Kara's trust. But he knew it wasn't enough. The media still clung to their story. The malicious rumors still hurt her, and he couldn't let it continue. Today, he wasn't just aiming to silence the press. He wanted the world to know the truth, and more importantly, he wanted Kara to hear his words. He took a deep breath, his voice low but resonant through the microphone. "I'm here today to set the record straight about Kara Carter. 6 years ago, I loved her, a real deep love, but I left her because of pressure from my family. She's not a gold digger, not someone manipulating me as the rumors claim. She's the mother of my 2 children, Lily and Leo, and the strongest woman I've ever known. The rumors you've heard were orchestrated by Olivia Moore, my former business partner. She fabricated messages, fed stories to the press to drive us apart. I have proof, recordings, receipts, testimony, and I'll be suing her for defamation." He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd, though his thoughts were solely on Kara. "I was wrong to doubt her," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I hurt her, not once but twice, by leaving 6 years ago and with the foolish lawsuit I recently started. I don't deserve her, but today in front of all of you, I want to apologize to Kara. I'm asking her for a chance, not with words but with actions. I know she needs to see me prove this love isn't just empty promises, and I will, no matter how long it takes." His words aired live across every news channel, and the tide of public opinion shifted instantly. Olivia Moore, exposed by James's evidence, became the target of outrage. Articles soon detailed her scheme, stripping her of credibility and ending her business career. But Brian didn't care about Olivia or the media. He left the press conference immediately, driving back to Willow Creek, his heart pounding with hope that Kara had heard him. When he arrived at Kara's flower shop, dusk was settling in. She stood in the yard, pruning shears in hand, her gaze distant as if lost in thought. Lily and Leo played nearby, their laughter ringing through the cool air. Brian approached, his hands clenched in his pockets, his voice trembling as he called, "Kara!" She looked up, her eyes meeting his, but she remained silent. He stepped closer, kneeling before her as he'd done so often in the past month. Did you hear the press conference? He asked gently. I told the truth to everyone, about my love for you, about my mistakes. I don't expect you to forgive me now, but I'm begging for a chance to prove myself. I'll do anything to make you trust me again. Kara studied him for a long moment, her eyes wavering between doubt and a flicker of emotion she couldn't hide. You're always good with words, she replied, her tone even but no longer icy. But I've heard enough words, Brian. If you want me to believe you, show me. She turned back into the house, leaving him with a clear challenge. Not promises, but deeds. Brian wasn't discouraged. He stayed in Willow Creek, embarking on a pursuit fueled by persistence and sincerity. Each morning he arrived early, taking Lily and Leo to the preschool a few streets away, despite Kara's initial protests. He waited patiently at the gate, chatting with Lily about her favorite flowers and listening to Leo talk about his beloved toy cars. When the kids returned, he lingered at the shop, helping Kara clean, water plants, and fix wobbly shelves. He didn't push her to talk, simply letting his actions speak for him. One afternoon, he brought a bouquet of white daisies, the kind she'd loved 6 years ago at her old shop. He set it on the table with a small note. I miss your smile when you see these. Kara picked up the flowers, her fingers brushing the petals, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. A small one, but enough for him to know she was softening. Lily and Leo gradually became the bridge between them. One day, Lily ran over, tugging Brian's hand and chirping, Uncle, play with me. Mommy said she likes when you tell stories. Brian glanced at Kara, catching her blush as she turned away, and he smiled, sitting down to tell Lily a tale of a hero fixing his mistakes. Leo, usually quiet, piped up, Are you staying long? I like you here. The boy's innocent words stirred Kara's heart, and she began to see Brian differently, not as the man who'd abandoned her, but as one trying his hardest to stay. One rainy evening, Brian arrived at the shop with a larger-than-usual bunch of daisies, soaked from running through the rain to bring them. Lily and Leo stood beside him, each holding a small flower, giggling. Uncle said to give these to Mommy. Kara looked at them, then at Brian standing on the porch, his coat drenched but his eyes alight with hope. Lily laughed. He said he wants to stay with Mommy forever. Say yes, Mommy, so we can have a dad. Tears welled in Kara's eyes, but she smiled, revealing her true feelings for the first time. She stepped out, standing before Brian, her voice trembling. You've shown me, Brian. I trust you, but if you hurt me again, I won't forgive you. He smiled, pulling her into his arms, holding her tight under the rain as Lily and Leo cheered and danced around them. For the first time in 6 years, they felt each other's warmth, and this time, it was forever. Chapter 9. A fulfilling conclusion. The autumn afternoon in Willow Creek bathed the wide grassy field in a gentle golden light, where a small but heartfelt wedding was unfolding. White wooden chairs were neatly arranged in 2 rows, adorned with clusters of white daisies. The flowers that had tied Kara and Brian together since 6 years ago. The guest list was modest, a handful of Kara's close friends from town, the kind elderly neighbor who'd helped her when she first arrived, and a few of Brian's former colleagues from New York. Yet the air brimmed with love, laughter mingling with the soft breeze like a melody of happiness. Kara emerged from the small wooden house, her simple cream-colored wedding dress hugging her figure, her brown hair cascading loosely with a delicate daisy crown. She wore no elaborate makeup, but her eyes shone, not with coldness or doubt, but with serenity and trust. Beside her, Lily held her hand, dressed in a tiny white dress, clutching a basket of daisy petals, while Leo, in a miniature gray suit, followed with a serious air, though his eyes sparkled with joy. As they approached the altar where Brian waited, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Dressed in a plain black suit, understated yet elegant, his smile outshone any attire. When Kara reached him, he took her hand, squeezing it gently as if afraid she'd vanish. You're beautiful, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. She smiled back, replying, You're not bad yourself. A soft chuckle rippled through the guests, and the pastor began the ceremony. Their vows were simple, not grandiose, but sincere to every word. Brian said, I promise to stay by your side, to love and protect you, Lily and Leo, until my last breath. I lost you once, and I'll never let that happen again. Kara looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes, and responded, I promise to trust you, to love you, and to build this family with you. I've forgiven you, and now I choose you. As they exchanged rings, two plain silver bands engraved with each other's names, Lily and Leo cheered, rushing to hug their parents' legs. Daddy! Mommy! Lily squealed, her voice clear and bright, while Leo, with a rare smile, whispered, Dad. Brian knelt, pulling the children into a tight embrace, tears falling as he laughed, the laugh of a father reclaiming his family. Kara watched, her heart swelling with warmth. She'd let go of the pain of her family's rejection, the nights she'd cried herself dry when Brian left, in the hurt from the lawsuit. She opened her heart to true love, not a perfect love, but one forged from healed scars. After the ceremony, a small reception unfolded on the field. A long table draped in white held cakes, fruits, and simple dishes Kara and Brian had prepared together. Lily darted around with the town kids, a smear of frosting on her hand, while Leo sat by Brian, quietly munching a cookie, his eyes always on his father. Kara stood by the table, gazing at her family, and for the first time in years, she felt true peace. Brian approached, wrapping his arms around her from behind, whispering, Thank you for giving me this chance. She leaned into him, replying, Thank you for not giving up. As dusk fell, they released paper lanterns into the sky. Lily and Leo lifted one together, cheering as it floated upward, its tiny glow blending with dozens of others, painting the night with brilliance. Brian held Kara's hand, looking at her with eyes full of love. I'll be a devoted husband and father. You know that, he said. She nodded, smiling. I believe you. In the months following the wedding, their little family truly became a home. Brian stepped back from most of his work in New York, keeping only a remote advisory role to spend time with Kara and the kids. He moved permanently to Willow Creek, helping Kara expand the flower shop into a larger space where she taught him to tend flowers, a way to reconnect as they had in the beginning. He learned patience with fragile petals, and through it, learned to cherish his family more deeply. Lily and Leo grew up surrounded by laughter and love. Lily often dragged Brian to the yard to play ball, shouting, Hurry up, Daddy, while Leo preferred sitting beside him, sketching colorful house designs with crayons. Brian devoted himself to every moment, driving them to school, reading bedtime stories, even building a small treehouse out back for the family to enjoy. He was no longer the cold man of 6 years ago, but a father and husband ready to give everything for those he loved. In Brian's love, Kara found complete healing. She no longer dreamt of lonely nights or her old family's harsh words. She wrote a short letter to her parents, not to blame, but to say she was happy, though she didn't expect a reply. She had her true family now, Brian, Lily, and Leo, and that was all she needed. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching Lily and Leo chase each other in the yard, Brian pulled Kara close, whispering, I won't promise you the world, but I'll give my whole world to love and protect this family. She rested her head on his shoulder, replying, This world is enough. Together they built a future, rising above the shadows of the past, and in the sound of Lily and Leo's laughter, they knew their pain had truly ended. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.